Welcome to Module 2 discussion of same chapter, chapter number 5, kinds of materials. In this iterative video session, we are going to learn about the other different physical properties of materials such as roughness or the smoothness, the appearance, lustrous or non-lustrous, hardness and softness of materials, and to prove that glass is harder than a metal. And the other property is transparency. Some materials are transparent, whereas some others are translucent and others are opaque. And the law of flotation in respect of water, that means which material can float on water and which are those materials that can't float on water. The density, the responsible factor for floating of any material in respect of water. Up to this. The roughness and the smoothness of material. Some materials we may have are mainly rough or uneven on their surface. What are the examples? Such as bark of tree, sandpaper, dust. These are the example of the rough or the these are the example of rough surface of the materials. I repeat, mainly the materials, the surface of the materials are of two kinds, rough and the smooth. The example of rough surface based materials are: number one, bark of the tree, rough surface; sandpaper, rough surface; dust, rough surface. Smooth surface are mainly the slippery surface of the materials, and the examples are glass surface, smooth surface; floor tiles, marble, the surface are smooth. And mainly the materials surface which are covered with oil or soap solution are slippery also. Now another feature is the appearance. Some metals are lustrous, whereas some others are non-lustrous. The example of lustrous metals are such as gold, steel, mercury, glass, diamonds, etc. These are the highly lustrous material. There are also the example of some other metals which are not more lustrous as compared to the gold, mercury, etc., such as iron, copper, aluminium, different metal alloys such as the brass and the bronze, because they may lose their shine on their surface due to the action of moisture and the gases from air. Moisture is the responsible factor for losing their shiness on the surface, and the examples are iron, copper, aluminum. These are the less lustrous. And polishing is the process. If it is done on the surface of any metal, the metal can regain their shiness. And another process is the cutting process. Whenever the surface of any metal is cut off, the surface becomes very lustrous in appearance. It is very important to know that coating is the process which is done with the help of the metal nickel on the surface of iron and brass, and the main intention for coating with nickel on the surface of the iron and brass metals is to protect them from getting rusted and in order to make them more lustrous. Once again I repeat, what is the importance of coating with nickel on the surface of iron and brass? The answer is in order to make more lustrous and to protect them from getting rusted. For this we must have to coat the iron surface and the brass surface with the nickel metal. Now what are the non-lustrous material? Examples are wood, paper, plastic, rubber. These are a piece of any rock. These are the example of non-lustrous because their surface are not so shiny. Now another feature is hardness and the softness of material, such as the piece of iron is hard but the piece of rubber is soft. We know most materials are hard in nature, and it should also be noted that in addition to that, the hard materials are difficult to cut and difficult to bend or get sketched. And what are the examples of such hard materials, such as steel, iron, and the rocks, bones, teeth, glass, diamond, etc. Sugar, sulfur, and the crystals of sugar, sulfur, and the salts. The hard materials such as the glass and the crystals of salts and sugars are brittle in nature. Brittle means they are powdery. They can be broken into smaller pieces or the powdered. This is the meaning of brittle. Examples are the glass and the crystal of salts and sugars. Some metals are also, we know, malleable and ductile. Malleables are mainly those metals which can be beaten into the thin sheets, and ductile this is the property of metal through which any metal can be drawn into the wires. This is the property of ductile, and this is the property of malleable. Malleable means any metal can be beaten into the thin sheets. Now what are the examples of the soft materials, such as wood, wax, rubber, fiber, cotton, wool, skin, muscles? These are the materials of soft surface. Now we may feel that the surface of wood is hard, but it should be noted that it can also be compressed a little. Rubber can also be pressed, and fiber can also be compressed. That's why their surface is smooth, not hard, because due to the presence of air bubbles on the surface of such materials. Now it is to be said that the glass surface is more harder than the metal. Why? Because glass is not scratched, but the surface of the metal is scratchable. And we can easily compare the hardness of the glass and the metal, or the example is iron. In order to compare, we have to consider the piece of iron, and the surface of metal is scratched with the piece of a glass, but glass is not scratchable. The substance which scratches the other substance is to be said more harder than the material which gets scratched, such as here the glass and the iron. Glass is harder than the metal because the iron is scratchable by using the glass, and the material which gets scratched here the iron surface is the softer material. Our interpretation is the glass surface is more harder than the iron metal surface. Now it is good to know that rubber is softer than the wood surface, and wood surface is softer than the metal, and metal surface is softer than the glass, and glass surface is softer than the diamond. But it is universally truth that diamond is called the most known hardest natural material in this earth, and it is mainly used to cut the glass and the rocks or the marble. Now what is transparency? Depending on the passing of light, we can categorize the materials into three groups, such as transparent materials, translucent materials, and the opaque materials. But always remember that in relation to light passing, we are going to categorize any materials into these three groups: transparent, translucent, and the opaque materials. Now what is the transparent material? This is the material through which light can easily pass. Example are glass, mica, air, water, alcohol. These are the example of transparent materials. The reason is we can easily see through these materials any objects. The translucent materials are those materials through which light can pass partially. What are the examples? Examples are such as the frosted glass of LED or the CFL bulb. LED means the light emitting diode, and the CFL means the compact fluorescent light. And the frosted glass which is used in LED and the CFL are mainly the translucent material. In addition to that, we can also add such as the oily sheet of any paper, milky water. These are the example of translucent materials. Now the last one is opaque materials, are those materials through which light cannot pass, and the examples are wood, metal, sheets, rock, etc. Now in respect of water, the flotation of materials, we know that some materials can float on water, whereas other materials cannot float on the water, or they may sink. Always remember that the materials which are lighter than water, I repeat, the materials which are lighter than water, they may float on water, but the materials which are heavier than water, they sink in the water. The responsible factor is here the density. It is the term which is used in physical science, and density means the mass by volume, and density is used to express the lightness or heaviness of any material in relation to water. Whenever generally the density is expressed by 1, any material which floats on water is less dense than the water, or we can say its density is less than 1. The density less than 1 or less dense than water, this material can float on water. but when the density of any matter becomes more than 1, the density of water, then they sink in the water. Considering density, we can easily find the materials which may float on water or which may sink in the water, but the responsible factor is density. If the density of any material is less than 1 density of water, then we can say they can float on the water. But if the density of any materials is more than 1 density of water, they sink in the water. Another example is that ice can float on water because the density of ice is less than the density of water. Thanks for watching.